Captain Taeho Kim floated in the small scout ship, his eyes fixed on the strange readings on his screen. The massive object had appeared 3 days ago, hanging silent at the edge of Earth's detection range. No one knew what it was. Taeho had been sent to find out. Scout Ship Delta to command, he said into his communicator. Still no visual contact. The object remained stationary. Continuing approach with stealth systems active. Command to Delta, came the reply. Proceed with caution, Captain. Remember mission parameters. Observe only. Do not engage. Taeho nodded to himself. He had no intention of engaging whatever was out there. At 34, he was one of Earth Defense Force's most experienced intelligence officers. He knew when to fight and when to watch and wait. The scout ship was small but fast, designed to avoid detection. Its stealth technology was the best Earth had developed. Taeho had used it on 12 previous missions without any problems. He checked the ship's systems one more time before pushing forward. Everything was working perfectly. His course would bring him close enough to the object to get detailed scans, without being detected. As he moved deeper into space, Taeho found his thoughts drifting to his apartment in New Seoul. It was small but comfortable, with a view of the rebuilt city center. More importantly, it was home to Bomi, the medium-sized brown dog he had rescued 3 years ago. He had found her near the spaceport, thin and afraid, abandoned when her family left Earth for one of the new colonies. Pets weren't allowed in the colonies yet. Many animals had been left behind. "I'll be back soon, girl," he had told Bomi that morning, scratching behind her ears. She had watched him with her intelligent brown eyes, head tilted to one side. His neighbor Hana had agreed to look after Bomi while he was gone. "It's just a 5-day mission," he had explained as he handed over Bomi's food and medicine. "She needs the pink pill every night for her joints, and if there's a storm, she gets scared. You'll need to let her hide under the blankets." Hana had smiled. "Don't worry, Taeho, we'll be fine, just come back safely." A sudden beep from his control panel snapped Taeho back to the present. The object was now within visual range. He turned off the autopilot and took manual control of the ship, his hands steady on the controls. "Delta to command. I have visual contact." Taeho's voice was calm and professional. "The object appears to be a ship. It's enormous." On his view screen, the alien vessel came into focus. It was unlike anything humans had ever built. The ship seemed almost alive, with a surface that moved and shifted like breathing skin. It was at least 20 times the size of Earth's largest battleship. "Sending images now," Taeho said, activating the ship's cameras. No signs of weapons or... A red light began flashing on his control panel. At the same time, a low alarm sounded. "Command." "I have a problem," Taeho said, his fingers flying over the controls. "Stealth systems are failing. Repeat, stealth systems are failing." "Delta, abort mission," Command ordered immediately. "Return to base at maximum speed." Taeho was already turning the ship around when he saw it. A pulse of blue light shooting from the alien vessel. Before he could react, the light engulfed his ship. Every system shut down at once. The engine died. Life support switched to emergency power. Even the gravity generators failed, leaving Taeho floating in his seat. "Command," he said urgently into his communicator. "I've been hit with some kind of energy pulse. All systems down. I'm being pulled toward the alien vessel." Static was his only answer. Taeho tried every restart procedure he knew. Nothing worked. Through the view screen, he could see his small ship being drawn closer to the massive alien vessel. A large opening had appeared in its side, like a mouth ready to swallow him whole. With communications down and no way to escape, Taeho focused on what he could control. He activated the ship's self-destruct sequence for the navigation computer. If the aliens captured him, they wouldn't be able to find Earth's defense headquarters or other military locations. Next, he deleted all mission files from the main computer. Finally, he swallowed the small capsule all intelligence officers carried. Not poison, but a compound that would temporarily scramble his brain's short-term memory centers if he was captured and drugged for information. As the alien ship pulled him closer, Taeho thought of Bomi again. He pictured her waiting by the door of his apartment, ears perked up at every sound in the hallway, hoping it was him returning. "I'm sorry, girl," he whispered. "I might be late this time." The scout ship passed through the opening into the alien vessel. Inside was a vast hangar bay filled with strange machines and creatures. The beings moved on multiple legs, their bodies covered in a hard shell-like material. Their heads featured large compound eyes that reflected the light in rainbow patterns. Tae-ho had encountered 3 alien species during his career, but never anything like these insect-like creatures. They surrounded his ship quickly, attaching devices to its hull. With a hiss, the main hatch of his ship opened despite the locks. Tae-ho stood ready. He was unarmed. Weapons would have been detected and might have provoked the very encounter he had been sent to avoid. 4 of the alien creatures entered his ship. They were tall, at least 7 feet, with jointed limbs and clicking mandibles. One of them held up a device that emitted a soft green light which ran over Tae-ho from head to toe. "Human male," a mechanical voice said, seemingly coming from one of the creatures. "Healthy, military trained." Tae-ho was surprised they had translation technology. It suggested they had studied humans before. "I am Captain Tae-ho Kim of the Earth Defense Force," he said clearly. "I was on a peaceful mission. Your ship appeared in our territory without warning." The aliens didn't respond to his words. 2 of them moved forward, grasping his arms with their strange jointed limbs. Their grip was impossibly strong. "You will provide information," the mechanical voice said. "I will provide my name, rank, and identification number only," Tae-ho replied, falling back on his training. "As is required by Earth military protocol." The aliens began moving him out of his ship. As they pulled him along, Tae-ho focused on his breathing. He had been trained for capture. He knew how to resist interrogation. He would reveal nothing that could endanger Earth. The last thing he saw before they took him from the hangar was his scout ship being dismantled by more of the insect-like aliens, its parts carried away for study. As they led him down a long corridor with walls that seemed to pulse with life, Tae-ho set his mind. They could do what they wanted to him. He wouldn't break. Earth's security depended on his silence, but deep inside, beyond his training and determination, was a small worry that grew with each step. Not for himself, but for a brown dog with intelligent eyes who was waiting for him to come home. Tae-ho lost track of time quickly in the alien cell. There were no windows, no day or night cycle. The lights changed from bright to dim at random times. Sometimes the room felt as cold as winter in New Seoul. Other times it was hot like summer. Strange sounds played just at the edge of his hearing, making it hard to sleep. He tried to keep count of his meals to track the days, but the aliens brought food at odd times. Sometimes what felt like minutes apart. Sometimes after he had grown very hungry. The food was a gray paste that tasted like nothing. It kept him alive, nothing more. Tae-ho guessed it had been about a week since his capture. His body felt weak from the changing temperatures and lack of good sleep, but his mind stayed sharp. He repeated his training in his head. Give only name, rank, and ID number. Do not show fear. Do not show anger. Stay calm and wait for a chance to escape. The door to his cell slid open silently. 2 of the insect-like aliens entered. They were even taller than Tae-ho remembered, with hard shells covering their bodies and many jointed limbs that moved in strange ways. "Come," said the mechanical voice. It came from a small device attached to the larger alien's body. Tae-ho stood, without argument. Fighting now would waste energy he might need later. The aliens led him down a long hallway. The walls seemed to pulse and move, as if the ship itself was alive. They stopped at a round door that opened into a large room. In the center of the room was a chair with straps. Around it were tables with devices Tae-ho did not recognize. Another alien waited inside. This one was bigger than the others, its shell a deeper blue color. It turned as they entered, compound eyes reflecting the light. "I am Mok," the translator device said. "Chief Science Officer of the Vector Research Vessel. You will sit." Tae-ho was pushed into the chair. The straps automatically tightened around his wrists, ankles, and chest. Captain Tae-ho Kim, Earth Defense Force, ID 87294, he said before they could ask anything. The alien named Mach made a clicking sound. Your species is physically weak, Mach said, moving closer. Soft skin, no natural armor, limited senses, yet you have defeated 2 of our scout missions. This is a puzzle we must solve. Tae-ho said nothing. The alien picked up a device from one of the tables. It looked like a small metal rod with a glowing tip. This will measure your pain responses, Mach explained. We need to understand human limits. Captain Tae-ho Kim, Earth Defense Force ID 87294, Tae-ho repeated. The next few hours were difficult. The aliens used the rod to cause pain in different parts of his body. It left no marks but felt like fire under his skin. Tae-ho kept his face blank. He had trained for pain. When the rod didn't make him talk, they tried other methods. They played sounds so loud his ears hurt. They showed him images designed to cause fear. They raised the temperature in the room until he could barely breathe, then dropped it so low his fingers turned blue. Through it all, Tae-ho said only one thing. Captain Tae-ho Kim, Earth Defense Force, ID 87294. After what felt like days, they returned him to his cell. Tae-ho collapsed on the thin mat that served as his bed. Every part of him hurt, but he felt a small victory. He had not broken. They came for him again after his next sleep cycle, and again after that. Each time, the tests were different. Sometimes they used devices that made his muscles seize up. Sometimes they kept him awake for what must have been days. Once they held his head underwater until his lungs burned for air. Mach seemed both frustrated and impressed by Tae-ho's resistance. Most species cannot withstand half of these procedures, Mach said during one session. Your physical weakness hides unusual mental strength. Tae-ho, exhausted and in pain, managed a small smile. Captain Tae-ho Kim, Earth Defense Force ID 87294. After each session, alone in his cell, Tae-ho would close his eyes and think of Earth. He pictured the rebuilt skyline of New Seoul, the mountains where he hiked on his days off, and the small park near his apartment where he took Bomi each morning. He wondered if Bomi was doing well with Hana. Was she taking her medicine each night? Was she sleeping on his bed like he allowed her to do, even though she was supposed to, use her own dog bed? Had there been any storms to frighten her? These thoughts kept him sane. They reminded him why he could not break, why he had to protect Earth's defense secrets. Not just for the billions of people, but for the small brown dog waiting for him to come home. 2 weeks passed, or what Tae-ho estimated was 2 weeks. The interrogation sessions continued. The Vectar tried new methods, but none worked. Tae-ho's body was covered in bruises. He had lost weight, but his mind remained his own. Then one day Mach entered his cell alone. This was new. The chief science officer carried something small in one of his many limbs. We have examined your vessel thoroughly, Mach said. Most items were standard equipment, but this is personal. Mach held up a small cube. When he pressed it, the cube projected a series of images into the air. They were Tae-ho's photos, pictures of Earth landscapes, of his apartment, of his friends, in the Earth Defense Force, and many pictures of Bomi. Bomi at the park, her tongue hanging out as she ran after a ball. Bomi in the mountains, standing proudly at Tae-ho's side after a long hike. Bomi on his couch wearing the ridiculous holiday sweater his colleague had given her as a joke. Tae-ho kept his face neutral, but his heart beat faster at the sight of his dog. He had forgotten about the photo cube. It had been a gift from his team when he completed 5 years of service. This creature appears in many of your images, Mach said, stopping on a close-up of Bomi's face. We have studied your ship's communication logs. You contacted someone named Hana regarding care instructions for Bomi. Is this the designation of this creature? Tae-ho said nothing, but he couldn't control the way his heart raced at the mention of Bomi's name. The Vectar had monitoring devices attached to his body during every session. They would notice the change. Interesting, Mach said. his compound eyes fixed on Taiho. When we caused physical pain, your vital signs remained relatively stable. When we threatened your life, there was minimal response. But the mention of, "This creature causes a significant reaction." Taiho tried to slow his breathing to calm his racing heart, but the image of Bomi remained projected in the air between them. "Captain Taiho Kim, Earth Defense Force, ID 87294, he said, but his voice sounded different even to his own ears. Not as strong, not as certain. Mock made a sound that might have been the Vectar version of satisfaction. "We have discovered a weakness," he said, "not in your body but in your mind. This connection to a simple animal." The alien turned off the photocube. The image of Bomi disappeared. Mock moved toward the door of the cell. "Rest, Captain Taiho Kim," Mock said. "Tomorrow's session will be different." After Mock left, Taiho sat very still on his mat. For the first time since his capture, he felt real fear. Not for himself, but for what the aliens might do with their new discovery. They had found his weakness. The one thing he cared about more than his duty, more than his own life. His dog, waiting faithfully for him on Earth. Taiho did not sleep that night. He sat on his mat, back against the wall, eyes open in the dim light of his cell. His mind raced with worry. The aliens had found something they could use against him. Not his fear of pain or death, but something much stronger. His love for Bomi. He tried to convince himself that the aliens could not possibly do anything to Bomi. She was safe on Earth, millions of miles away with Hana. The Vectar had no way to reach her. It would all be empty threats, but doubt crept in. What if the Vectar had technology he did not understand? What if they had other ships near Earth? What if they could somehow get to Bomi? The door slid open early. 2 Vectar guards entered and took him to the interrogation room without a word. His stomach tightened when he saw Mock waiting there, standing next to the familiar chair with its restraints. "Good morning, Captain Kim," Mock said through the translator. "I trust you had time to consider your situation." Taiho said nothing as the guard secured him in the chair. The restraints felt tighter than before, digging into his wrists and ankles. "Today we will not cause you physical pain," Mock said. "We have learned it is not effective with your species. Or perhaps just not effective with you." The alien moved to a control panel on the wall. The lights in the room dimmed. A large screen appeared on the wall opposite Taiho. "We have been studying your species for some time," Mock continued. "We have observed your social structures, your habits, your attachments. Humans form strong bonds with other species. It is unusual." The screen came to life. It showed an image of Earth, blue and beautiful. Then the image zoomed in, showing a continent, a country, a city. With growing horror, Taiho recognized the skyline of New Seoul. "This is your home, yes?" Mock asked. "New Seoul in the country called South Korea." Taiho kept his face still, but his mind was racing. How did they have these images? Had they been watching Earth all along? The image zoomed in further, showing a residential area, then an apartment building. Taiho recognized it immediately. It was his building. "Our intelligence units have been on your planet for some time," Mock explained, "gathering information, mapping locations of interest, including the homes of military personnel." The screen showed the entrance to the building, then a hallway, then a door, Taiho's door. The number 1403 was clearly visible. "Captain Taiho Kim, Earth Defense Force, ID 87294, Taiho said, but his voice shook slightly. "Yes, we know who you are," Mock replied. "We know where you live, and we know what you care about." The screen changed again. Now it showed the inside of Taiho's apartment, the small living room with its plain furniture, the kitchen where he rarely cooked, the bedroom with its neatly made bed, and there, curled up on the bed, was Bomi. Her brown fur was slightly messy and she looked thinner than when Taiho had left. But it was definitely her. "How did you get this?" Taiho demanded, forgetting his training for a moment. "This isn't possible." Mock made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. "We have many capabilities you do not understand. We have units on your planet that can move undetected. They can enter any building. They can take anything. Or anyone. Tejo stared at the screen. It had to be a trick. A simulation. They couldn't really be in his apartment. They couldn't really see Bomi. The image moved as if someone was walking toward the bed. Bomi lifted her head, ears perking up. She looked directly at the camera, then stood up on the bed. Her tail began to wag hesitantly. "She thinks you have returned," Mock observed. "She recognizes your scent on our unit." Tejo watched as a hand came into view on the screen. Not a human hand, but a Vectar limb, disguised to look more human-like. It reached out toward Bomi. "Stop," Tejo said, his voice louder now. "Don't touch her." "We can take her at any time," Mock said. "Our research vessels include extensive laboratory facilities. We have never studied Earth canines in detail. It would be informative." The hand on the screen moved closer to Bomi. She sniffed at it curiously, still wagging her tail. "What do you want?" Tejo asked, his voice tight with anger and fear. "The same thing we have always wanted," Mock replied. "Information. Earth's defense systems, military installations, command centers, access codes, the things you have refused to tell us." The screen changed again. Now it showed a laboratory similar to the one Tejo was in, but with different equipment. The tables held instruments that looked designed for dissection and analysis. "Our biology division has expressed great interest in examining a living Earth canine," Mock continued. "Especially one with the medical condition your Bomi has, the joint disease for which she takes medication. They believe it could provide useful data." Tejo pulled against his restraints, no longer trying to hide his emotions. "She's just a dog," he said desperately. "She has nothing to do with any of this." "Yet she clearly matters to you," Mock observed. "More than your own safety, more than your duty to your military. That makes her very useful to us." The screen changed back to Tejo's apartment. Bomi was now standing by the door, looking back at the camera, as if waiting to be taken for a walk. "Our unit can bring her to us immediately," Mock said, "or they can leave her alone. The choice is yours, Captain Kim." Tejo closed his eyes. He tried to think clearly through his panic. This had to be a deception. The Vectar couldn't possibly have infiltrated Earth so completely. They couldn't be in his apartment right now. But what if they were? What if they really could take Bomi? The thought of her alone and afraid, being examined by creatures like Mock, was unbearable. "I need proof," Tejo said finally, opening his eyes. "Proof that what you're showing me is real, that you can actually reach her." Mock made a gesture with one of his limbs. The screen split in two. On one side was the view from the apartment. On the other was a view of New Seoul's skyline, as if from a high point. "Our unit will exit your apartment and show you the view from your building's roof," Mock explained. "You will see it as real time, real location." Tejo watched as the camera moved away from Bomi, who barked once as if in protest. The view showed the apartment door opening, then the hallway, then the elevator. Finally, it showed the door to the roof opening. The view matched exactly with what Tejo knew the view from his building's roof looked like. The rebuilt city center, the mountains in the distance, the river cutting through the city. Most convincing. Of all, the weather matched the time of year when he had left. Early autumn, with trees just beginning to change color. If this was a simulation, it was incredibly detailed. "Do you need more proof, Captain?" Mock asked. "Perhaps our unit should return to your apartment and bring your Bomi to the roof? The view is quite high. It would be unfortunate if there was an accident." "No," Tejo said quickly. "I believe you." His mind raced. If the Vectar really did have units on Earth disguised and able to move freely, the situation was worse than anyone at Earth Defense Force had imagined. They weren't just facing a single ship. This was an advanced infiltration. "What exactly do you want to know?" he asked, his voice hollow. "Now we are making progress," Mock said, satisfaction evident in his tone. "We will begin with Earth's orbital defense grid, access codes, weak points, patrol patterns. Taeho looked at the screen. Again, Bomi had returned to his bed, curling up on his pillow. She looked sad. "I want your guarantee that she will not be harmed," Taeho said. "You have it," Mok replied. "Provide useful information, and your pet remains safe. Refuse, or provide false information, and she comes to our laboratories." Taeho lowered his head. For the first time since his capture, he felt truly defeated. His training had prepared him to resist pain, to face death without fear, but it had not prepared him for this. "I'll tell you about the defense grid," he said, finally. "But I want your unit to leave my apartment first, and I want regular proof that Bomi is safe." "A reasonable request," Mok agreed. "We will begin tomorrow. For now, you will return to your cell to consider exactly what information you will provide." As the guards unstrapped him from the chair, Taeho looked one last time at the screen, at Bomi, alone on his bed, waiting faithfully for his return. "I'm sorry," he whispered, too quietly for the translator to pick up. He had finally found the one thing that could make him break, the one weakness he could not overcome. His love for a small brown dog named Bomi. Taeho sat on the edge of his mat, head in his hands. The cell seemed colder than usual, or maybe it was just the chill of defeat he felt inside. Tomorrow he would betray everything he had sworn to protect. His training, his duty, his planet, all sacrificed for a dog, but not just any dog. Bomi, the one living being who loved him without question, who waited by the door each day for his return, who had been abandoned once before and now trusted him completely. "What choice do I have?" he whispered to the empty cell. As night turned to morning, or what passed for morning on the alien ship, Taeho reached a decision. He would give the Vectar some information, not everything, and not the most important things, but enough to satisfy them. Enough to keep Bomi safe. The guards came for him earlier than usual. This time they brought him to a different room. It was larger than the interrogation room, with several control panels and screens. Mok waited beside a chair that looked more comfortable than the restraint chair Taeho had become familiar with. "Captain Kim," Mok greeted him. "Please sit. There is no need for restraints today, as long as you cooperate." Taeho sat down slowly, eyes moving around the room. There were 3 other Vectar present, working at the control panels. This appeared to be some kind of command center. "Before we begin," Taeho said, "I want to see Bomi again. I need to know she's still safe." Mok made a gesture and one of the screens lit up. It showed Taeho's apartment again. Bomi was in the living room this time, eating from her food bowl. She looked well enough. "Our unit left your apartment as promised," Mok explained. "But we continue to monitor from outside. We can return at any time." Taeho nodded, relieved to see Bomi was alone and seemingly unharmed. "What do you want to know first?" "The orbital defense grid," Mok said. "Its capabilities, its weaknesses." Taeho took a deep breath. This was it. The moment of betrayal. He opened his mouth to speak, then stopped. A thought had occurred to him. An important question he should have asked sooner. "Why are you so interested in Earth?" he asked. "We're not advanced compared to you. We've barely begun space exploration beyond our own solar system." Mok's compound eyes seemed to study him for a moment. "Your planet has something we want, something rare and valuable. It does not matter what. Tell us about the defense grid." Taeho nodded slowly. "Earth has 12 orbital defense satellites," he began. "They form a network that can detect any approach to the planet. This much was public knowledge. Any spacefaring race with good sensors would know this already." Taeho was stalling while he thought about what else to say. "Continue," Mok prompted. "We need access codes, patrol patterns." "The main control center is located beneath the North American continent," Taeho said. This was false. The main control center was actually underwater in the Pacific Ocean. All commands must be verified through there. Mok turned to one of the other Vectar and made a series of clicking sounds that the translator didn't pick up. The other alien responded with similar sounds. "You are being cooperative," Mok said, turning back to Taeho. "This is good. Tell us more about these orbital defenses, their weapons capabilities." Taeho began describing the defense satellites, mixing truth with carefully constructed lies. He mentioned laser weapons they had, but changed their power levels. He described shield technology that didn't exist. He gave false access codes that would trigger alarms if used. All the while, he kept glancing at the screen showing his apartment. Bomi had finished eating and was now lying on the couch in the spot where Taeho usually sat. After about an hour, Mok seemed satisfied with the information about the orbital defenses. Now tell us about Earth's ground-based defenses, specifically those in the region you call Asia. Taeho hesitated. This was getting too close to real, vital information. The Asian Coalition Defense Force had the most advanced ground-based weapon systems on Earth. If the Vectar knew their true capabilities, they could plan an effective attack. I need a break, Taeho said. And I need more proof that Bomi is safe. I want to see your unit near my apartment to know they're really there. Mok made another gesture. The screen changed to show the street outside Taeho's apartment building. The view was from about head height, as if someone was standing on the sidewalk looking up. Is this sufficient? Mok asked. Taeho studied the image carefully. It was definitely his street. The shops across from his building were the same ones he passed every day. People walked by, going about their normal lives, unaware of the alien presence among them. But something caught his eye. Something wrong. A sign in one of the Yao shop windows advertised a summer sale. But it had been early autumn when Taeho left on his mission. The trees in the earlier views had shown leaves changing color. This didn't match. With a flash of insight, Taeho realized what was happening. The Vectar didn't have units on Earth at all. They were showing him recordings. Old recordings probably gathered by some kind of stealth probe before their ship arrived. The images of his apartment, of Bomi, were not live. They were from months ago. The Vectar had been bluffing. They couldn't touch Bomi. Taeho fought to keep his face neutral, to not show the surge of relief and hope he felt. If he was right, if the Vectar were lying about being on Earth, then he didn't need to tell them anything real. Bomi was safe with Hana, just as he had arranged before his mission. The Asian Coalition has 4 main defense centers, Taeho began, now fully committed to providing false information. The primary one is in Singapore. This was completely untrue. The main defense center was in a classified location in Mongolia. Taeho continued providing detailed but entirely fictional information about Earth's defenses. He made up names of commanders, security protocols, and weapon systems. All the while, he watched Mok for any sign that the alien suspected he was lying. But Mok seemed to be accepting everything, directing the other Vectar to record the information. After another hour, Mok raised a limb to stop him. This is good progress, Captain Kim. We will continue tomorrow. There is still much we need to know. Taeho nodded, trying to look tired and defeated. It wasn't hard. Despite his discovery of the Vectar's deception, he was exhausted from the mental effort of creating believable lies. Can I see Bomi again before I go back to my cell? He asked. Mok gestured, and the screen showed his apartment again. Bomi was no longer on the couch. The view panned around the living room and into the bedroom. Bomi was on his bed again, sleeping. She sleeps a lot, Mok observed. Is this normal for her species? Yes, Taeho said, hiding his growing certainty that he was watching recordings. Especially when she's alone, she misses me. An interesting bond, Mok said. We have studied many species across many worlds. Few form attachments to other species the way humans do. As the guards prepared to take him back to his cell, Taeho took one last look at the screen, at Bomi sleeping peacefully on his bed. Recording or not, the sight of her gave him strength. She was why he had to survive this, why he had to find a way back to Earth. Tomorrow we will discuss your planet's fleet, Mok said as Taeho was led away. Rest well, Captain Kim. Back in his cell, Taeho let a small smile cross his face for the first time in weeks. The Vectar thought they had broken him. They thought they had found his weakness and exploited it perfectly, but they had made a mistake. a simple one that gave away their deception. Now Tai-Ho had an advantage. He could feed them false information without fear for Bomi's safety. More importantly, he had hope again. And with hope came the determination to not just survive but to find a way to escape, to warn Earth about the Vectar, to get back home to Bomi. As he lay down on his mat, Tai-Ho began to plan. The Vectar wanted information from him. Tomorrow he would give them something they would never forget. Tai-Ho woke with a clear mind and a solid plan. For the first time since his capture, he felt in control. The Vectar thought they had broken him by threatening Bomi. Instead, they had given him the strength to fight back. He ate the tasteless food they brought him and waited patiently for the guards to take him to Mach. When they came, he walked between them without resistance, as if he had fully accepted his situation. Mach was waiting in the same room as yesterday, standing beside one of the control panels. The screen already showed Tai-Ho's apartment, with Bomi lying by the window in a patch of sunlight. "Good morning, Captain Kim," Mach greeted him. "I trust you rested well. Today we will continue our discussion of Earth's defenses." Tai-Ho nodded and sat in the chair they had provided. "What specifically do you want to know?" "Your fleet," Mach said. "Numbers, capabilities, command structure." "Before I tell you about that," Tai-Ho said carefully, "I need to access one of my neural implants. All Earth Defense Force officers have them. Mine contains detailed technical information that would be useful to you." This was a lie. Earth Defense Force officers did have neural implants, but they were simple communicators and emergency locators, not data storage. However, Tai-Ho was counting on the Vectar not knowing this. Mach's compound eyes studied him for a moment. "Neural implants? Our scans detected no such technology in your brain. They're designed to be undetectable," Tai-Ho explained, "a safety measure in case of capture. They're only accessible through specific neural patterns." Mach made a series of clicking sounds to the other Vectar in the room. They responded with similar sounds. Tai-Ho guessed they were discussing whether to believe him. "What exactly is stored in this implant?" Mach asked finally. "Technical specifications for our fleet, access codes, defense protocols, everything you want to know," Tai-Ho said. "But I can only access it in a specific mental state. I need to enter a light meditative trance." Mach seemed suspicious but intrigued. "Proceed. But know that if this is a deception, your pet will suffer." Tai-Ho closed his eyes and began to breathe deeply. He was not actually trying to access a non-existent implant. He was preparing himself for what would come next. During his time in the cell, he had remembered something important from his training. All Earth Defense Force intelligence officers had a real implant, though not the kind he had described to Mach. It was called a Trojan package, a last resort weapon for captured officers. The Trojan package contained a sophisticated computer virus designed to attack alien technology. It was stored in a tiny capsule embedded in the officer's upper arm. To activate it, the officer needed to press the capsule in a specific pattern and then connect to an alien computer system. Tai-Ho had felt the small bump in his arm throughout his captivity, but had not used it, fearing it would not work or would not help him escape. Now, he had a plan. "I need to interface with your computer," Tai-Ho said, opening his eyes. "My implant uses visual patterns to unlock. I need to see data flowing to sync with it." Mach hesitated, then made a decision. "You may approach the terminal, but do not touch anything without permission." Tai-Ho stood and walked slowly to the nearest control panel. As he moved, he pressed the capsule in his arm in the activation pattern. 3 quick presses, 2 long ones, 3 quick again. He felt a slight tingling sensation as the capsule dissolved, releasing the virus into his bloodstream. It would now be present in his sweat, his breath, even his tears, ready to transfer to any technology he came in contact with. "Show me data flow," Tai-Ho requested, standing close to the terminal. "Any kind will do. I just need patterns to focus on." One of the other Vectar activated a display that showed streaming symbols and numbers. Tai-Ho leaned in close. pretending to concentrate. He breathed deeply, exhaling directly onto the control panel. Then he reached up as if to rub his eyes, collecting sweat from his forehead, and let his hand brush against the edge of the terminal. "I can feel it unlocking," he said. "Just a few more moments." The virus would be transferring now, invisible and silent. It was designed to infiltrate alien systems without detection, spreading throughout a ship's network before activating. "I have it," Tejo announced after a minute. "The full specifications of Earth's fleet are now accessible to me." He began to recite detailed but completely fictional information about Earth's ships. He described vessels that didn't exist, weapons that hadn't been invented, defenses that were purely imaginary. All the while, the virus spread through the vector ship systems, waiting for the right moment to activate. Tejo talked for nearly an hour, creating an elaborate fiction about Earth's military capabilities. The Vectar recorded everything, never suspecting that none of it was real. Finally, Tejo said, "There's one more thing. The most important thing. The emergency self-destruct sequence for the orbital defense grid. If you ever needed to neutralize Earth's defenses quickly, this would be the way." Mock leaned forward, obviously interested. "Tell us." Tejo recited a long string of numbers and letters, a meaningless sequence he made up on the spot. As he finished, he made a slight gesture with his hand, touching the control panel one more time. This was the trigger for the virus. As soon as he finished speaking, alarms began to blare throughout the ship. The lights flickered, and the screens went blank for a moment, before showing error messages in the Vectar language. "What is happening?" Mock demanded, turning to the other aliens. They rushed to their terminals, clicking urgently in their language. "Systems failing," one of them reported through the translator. "Power fluctuations in all sectors. Life support compromised. What have you done?" Mock turned to Tejo, his body language showing anger for the first time. "Humanity isn't just physically resilient," Tejo said, standing tall despite his weeks of captivity. "We understand the power of love and loyalty. What you thought was my weakness was actually my strength." The ship lurched suddenly, throwing everyone off balance. Tejo used the moment to run for the door. It was already opening automatically, as the virus caused system failures throughout the vessel. "Stop him," Mock ordered, but the guards were dealing with their own problems as emergency protocols activated throughout the ship. Tejo ran through the corridors, following the emergency lights that the virus had conveniently left active. He had studied the ship's layout during his many trips to interrogation, and he had a good idea where the escape pods would be. Behind him, he could hear the Vectar in confusion. The ship's systems were failing in sequence, just as the Trojan package was designed to do. Life support would remain functioning long enough for the aliens to survive, but navigation, weapons, and communications would be permanently damaged. Tejo found the bay with the escape pods. As he had hoped, the virus had unlocked the pods while locking down most other ship functions. He climbed into one, quickly studying the simple controls. The Vectar escape pods were designed to be easy to use in emergencies. Tejo found what looked like a launch sequence and activated it. The pod's door sealed shut just as several Vectar rounded the corner into the bay. With a whoosh, the pod ejected from the ship. Through the small viewport, Tejo watched the massive Vectar vessel growing smaller, drifting powerless in space. The pod's navigation system was still functioning. Tejo set a course for Earth, though he knew it would take days for the small craft to reach his home planet. The pod had enough air, water, and emergency rations to sustain him. As the stars streaked, Tejo finally allowed himself to relax. He had survived. He had protected Earth's secrets. And soon, he would be home. His thoughts turned to Bomi. She would be waiting for him, just as she always did. Hana would have taken good care of her, giving her medicine and comfort during storms. She would be fine. 3 days later, an Earth Defense Force patrol ship picked up the pod's distress signal. They brought Tejo aboard, amazed to find the officer they had given up for dead weeks ago. After medical treatment and debriefing, Tejo was finally allowed to go home. A car took him to his apartment building in New Seoul. As he opened his apartment door, he heard the familiar sound of nails on the floor. Bomi came running, her whole body wiggling with excitement. She jumped up, putting her paws on his chest, licking his face frantically. Tae-ho dropped to his knees, wrapping his arms around her warm body. "I'm sorry I was gone so long," he whispered into her fur. "I missed you so much." Bomi didn't care about explanations. She was simply happy he had returned, as she always believed he would. Later that evening, as Earth's defense forces moved to secure the disabled Vectar ship now in orbit, Tae-ho sat on his couch with Bomi curled against him. He scratched behind her ears as she dozed. "You know, the Vectar were right about one thing," he told her quietly. "My love for you is a vulnerability. But they didn't understand what that really means." Bomi opened one eye lazily, then closed it again, content in her human's presence. "It wasn't weakness to care so deeply for you," Tae-ho continued. "It gave me the strength to endure, to fight, to come home when nothing else could have." Outside his window, the lights of New Seoul shone brightly against the night sky. Safe, protected. And on his couch, Tae-ho held the reason why he would always fight to keep it that way. His most loyal friend, his greatest strength, his Bomi.